Welcome back to the Tech Coach Corner YouTube series presented by Dyknow. I'm Tiara Lustig, your host, and today we have a great episode with Rachelle Dene Poth talking all about student engagement tools and how you can promote student engagement during remote learning and going back to the classroom, however you're going back this fall. Before we jump into the episode, just want to remind everyone to please subscribe to Dyknow's YouTube channel and follow us on all of our social media channels. We also are 2 weeks away from our Progressive Learning Conference. It's going to be a week-long conference that's going to have a lot of great sessions from different people who have been on the Tackling Tech podcast, on the YouTube series, and who we haven't worked with before. So Tara Martin will be keynoting that event on Monday, September 21st. So we can't wait to have you all join us. Don't forget to register for that in the description of this video. Registration is free and you'll get access to all of the recordings during the week and after the conference week. I think that's all I have to plug today, so let's jump into our conversation with Rochelle. Welcome back to Tech Coach Corner, everyone. I'm Tiara Lustig, your host, and today I'm joined by Rachelle Dene Poth. Rachelle, would you mind giving a brief introduction to yourself before we jump into the episode?
Yeah, sure. So I am a Spanish and STEAM teacher, also consultant and author and an attorney. And so I always laugh when I think about those things because I clearly love school and love learning. So thanks for having me today.
Of course, we're happy to have you here. I think one topic, we've had you on the Tackling Tech podcast. One thing we talked a lot about was student engagement. And I think that's become a really big kind of question mark and a big thing to discover during this time of remote learning is how to maintain engagement with students from a remote setting. And I think one big topic that's come out of that is different tools that can be used for student engagement. So I'd love to get your take on what tools you found are successful to promote student engagement, or even strategies outside of tools that you've used to engage students during remote learning.
Yeah, well, it's when I think about student engagement, I was so wrong about it a couple of years ago. And when I got my master's degree, I had to really focus on doing some research about student engagement. And so once I went through that and connected with my students, had a way better understanding of it. And so over the last couple of years, just some ideas of things that I've done in my classroom, I know that were more promoting student choice. And I noticed that giving my students more options, just as an example, in one class, I was teaching 3 levels of Spanish, and they were not all there on the same day, and trying to figure out, okay, what can I provide for them? And so using some strategies like project-based learning, and we also did choice boards, and we used HyperDocs, and the students were kind of just able to kind of self-direct or work together with their peers, whatever they wanted. But they were really invested, especially with project-based learning, because they decided the topic. And even though at first, for some of them, it was really uncomfortable because they weren't being told what the end product was that they had to create, but they were kind of deciding and working through it on their own. And I noticed that for many of the students, they just couldn't wait to get started on the learning. And whenever we were kind of finished with one of the phases, they even said, I stopped caring about grades. I just really wanted to know what else was out there. What could I do differently? Who could I work with? And I was just so interested in what I was learning. And so those types of things, for years, I thought that just because my students were playing a game and they looked like they were having fun, that they were engaged in it. But then I learned, like, no, not all the time is that the case. But when I've used things in my class like stations, and one of them is a game that's either already created because there's so many options out there, or when students get a chance to create their own game and it's like hands-on and they're interested and they're motivated and their classmates are kind of pushing them forward, all of that really did tie nicely back in to kind of keep them going, and they were more actively engaged in the classroom. But even there's some different digital tools that I use that I know that my students have said that even the ones that are, I don't really want to use this technology, are able to find something that meets their interests and their needs specifically. And they are able to create something on their level. Even if they don't want to use technology, they still have fun creating, and it's more meaningful. And so it definitely goes a long way whenever we give them those choices.
Yeah, and I think I think all of the topics we've talked about with you really tie together well, because you can't have students, not all students are going to be engaged with the same learning activities. Each student learns differently, so different activities and different strategies are going to engage them differently. So I think it's really having them choose and personalizing that experience, and that's really what ultimately engages them. Are there any specific tools that have come to light maybe during remote learning that you had never used in your classroom before that really helped you engage students from a distance?
I wouldn't say ones that I hadn't used, but one that, like, I use Buncee a lot. We've used it for many years, probably 5 years now. But it's one that whenever our schools close, like in my school, we don't have a tech coach. And so a lot of the elementary teachers, especially, were looking for ideas of how to connect with students and how to share information, to be able to do read alouds. I mean, so many things, but even for my students to be able to kind of connect with each other. So it's one that we've used, but I just saw that the possibilities for using it just kind of went way beyond that and really brought a lot of students together, and not just in my school. I mean, like on a global scale, being able to share and connect. So definitely that one, and even Flipgrid, being able to see and hear each other when you can't be in the same space, with all of the different topics that they have available. But actually, one more I'll throw on. I started to use Wonderopolis a little bit more, because tied into my Genius Hour with my one class, just giving them some interesting things to wonder about.
That's interesting. Those are great tools. I feel like those have come up a lot in our conversations about remote learning. And I love you mentioning the global relationships. I think that's something too from a professional learning community standpoint. So many educators, I think, now are finally realizing the capacity and reach that even social media has, or these different tools have, to get that global feedback and create relationships on a global scale. So I think that's really important. Well, thank you so much for sharing that information on student engagement during remote learning and in the classroom. I think it'll be really impactful for our audience. If they would like to connect with you further, where can they find you to engage with you?
Rdene 915, which pretty much straight across the board. So RDENE 915. Yeah, would love to hear from people for sure.
Perfect. Well, we will put that below so everyone can easily engage with you. And once again, Rochelle, thank you so much for being with us today.